Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. It is a Saturday morning, January 18th, and the boys are about to crank the first roster battle of the 2025 season. Now, what kind of came about for this episode wasn't necessarily planned. Dill, you and I just went back and forth for about an hour on our Saturday morning over a cup of coffee in terms of what team we would rather take in the ACC going into 2025. It's going to become very clear that we both have our teams that we're rocking with going into the 2025 year. This is going to be a fun one. Again, this tells you a little bit about the fella's social life. Saturday morning, we're talking roster battles going into 2025. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, to the Miami fans, to the Clemson fans, many of y'all know the drill. Let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different takes to be had in terms of how these rosters stack up. Going to go position group by position group. Talk about what positions we take over one another. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, let's start at the top. Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik. Look, there ain't many quarterbacks in the country that you're taking over these two cats going into 2025. But who do you have going into the 2025 season?
I think you got to go Cade Klubnik. I think, to me, a bit of a better playmaker, certainly a better playmaker, better athlete, can do some things.
Fair.
But the way he's leveled out his game and steadied that ship and, can just really execute and dice you up from the pocket. You go to that Texas game, that's about as good a quarterback play as you'll see, especially with the fact that they couldn't run the ball at all, and their running back room was really starting to get banged up. And the way he carried that team against a really, really good defense, I look at Cade Klubnik, his ascendance has kind of gone a little under the radar, and I think a lot of that has to do with the defense not being able to hold up their end of the bargain and have the team success that probably a lot of people would have wanted. But he's playing some unbelievable football. And Carson Beck, frankly, he went the opposite direction in 24.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that. Look, Carson Beck, the rep that he's getting coming out of 2024 is insane. That Georgia offensive line was not even close to the offensive line we're used to seeing for Georgia. The run game was largely non-existent for the Georgia Bulldogs. The pass catchers couldn't catch squat. Look, Carson Beck, for one, the numbers aren't even that bad. And number two, there was a reason for his drop of play in 2024. Now, was he as good as we saw in 2023? Probably not. But I do think he's a very good quarterback still. And why I'm going to take Carson Beck over Cade Klubnik. And this tells you Cade's improvement. If you would have told me 6 months ago we were debating on what quarterback we'd rather have going into 2025, and I had to think about it, that tells you the level that Cade jumped in 2024. And Dill, I'm high on Cade too. But Carson Beck's fit with this Miami Hurricanes offense, I think is going to be really good. Because if there's one thing we know about Miami going into 2025, they're going to run the heck out of the football. And Carson Beck off of play action ain't get much better. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with Carson Beck. This one's razor thin, though. And I totally get the Clemson fans that are going to jump on me in the comment section because Cade's a dude, too. If you're these two fan bases, what fires you the most up is that there's not many quarterbacks in the country that you're taking over these two guys. Dill, running back room. I think this one is probably pretty clear, at least to me. I'm taking Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. For Clemson, this might be the biggest story for Clemson on offense. You feel dang good about the receivers. You feel really good about the offensive line, pretty much returning everybody. The running back room's a very big question mark. Now, can Gideon Davidson be a guy as a true freshman? Can Adam Randall make the transition potentially from wide receiver to running back? I'll give it to you too. Running back room, who are you taking?
Yeah, it is pretty clear. And you saw Mark Fletcher just play really good football behind Damian Martinez. Jordan Lyle emerged. He might have the higher ceiling, just
yes, he does.
His ability to move and some of those, that more explosive ability than probably Fletcher. But I think they complement each other well. It's a team that can grind you down with Fletcher, pop big ones with Lyle. I think it's a really well-constructed room. And you said it, the issue was when Philmhoff wasn't on the field, it was a huge problem, and you could tell for Clemson. Who's going to be that guy? I guess when you don't know it, and then you're looking at a room in Miami that has two guys you're really confident in, you got to go.
That's what it comes down to. Is that we got two proven commodities for this Miami Hurricanes running back room. We really don't have one yet for Clemson. Now, I'm a big fan of Gideon Davidson. So what does he look like as a true freshman? We'll see. Let's go to the pass catchers. I'll give you the T-box first. And let's include the tight ends in this conversation because I think there are two really intriguing tight ends for both of these football teams. but I'll give you the T-box first. Pass catchers, who you got?
I think it's got to be Clemson. I
Yeah, I
think the
agree with
way
this.
TJ Moore and Brian Lesko really started to come on, I mean,
Yeah.
just playing really big time boundary football, getting back Antonio Williamson in the slot, like you look like Clemson might have one of the better wide receiver rooms in
Yes.
the country with those three guys. And you even throw in a tight end in Christian Betancourt, who is very interesting. I think Olsen Pat Henry kind of frankly reminds me a little bit of Elijah like Lofton. Like he doesn't necessarily look like a tight end as his body type, not super tall, not super long, but interesting athlete, does a good job blocking. At the end of the day, you got to go Clemson though, because
You
those
have to.
boundary guys
And
are
I
amazing.
think you're right. Talk about another thing we don't have on our bingo card, talking about Clemson's wide receivers going into 2025 being one of the better units in the country. I think that's true. Very similar conversation that we had with the running backs, just kind of reversed. Look, we know we got a guy in Brian Wesco. We know we got a guy in Antonio Williams. We know we got a guy in TJ Moore. We know we have a guy in Tyler Brown coming back too. That's a really big story. With Miami, it's okay. We know CJ Daniels is very solid, obviously from Liberty to LSU, now to Miami. Outside of that, it's question marks. Now, I think JoJo Trader can be. I like Malachi Tonia. He's got to be highlighted in blue as a true freshman. And Elijah Lofton might be the best pure pass catcher for this Miami Hurricanes team in the 2025 year. You got more answers for Clemson than you do with Miami. And I'll say this, I'm interested to see if, look, Miami tried to get wide receivers in the portal. I think it was hard to sell wide receivers to come without Carson Beck. Now that you have Carson Beck, it might not be over the next couple of weeks, but that spring transfer portal window, we might have to run this back, Dale, because this wide receiver room might change for the Miami
It is
Hurricanes.
interesting because, like, again, Miami's really talented with some young guys in that
Yes.
room. Like you said, no JoJo Trader, Nyakar, like super interesting young players. So I don't know that I like have as much or as little confidence as certain people have in Miami's wide receiver room. Just like, again, everyone, like, you didn't really hit on a big time portal wideout. Like CJ Daniels, fine wide receiver for sure. But when you look at like what they have coming through the pipeline, God, if just a couple of those guys hit, like they're going to be just fine at that wideout.
Oh, 100%. This might be one where it's like if you're Mario Cristobal, I think you got another roster that you could do some damage with. Maybe you want to add one more proven commodity into that room. Offensive line, Dill, I'm going to go with Miami. They lose some pieces. I like Markel Bell at left tackle. James Brockemeyer, plug and play center. That right side with Inez and Francis is really good. Now, here's what I find very interesting for Clemson. It's pretty much just running it back. And you got some young guys that are kind of coming through the pipeline. I'm a really big fan of Elijah Thurman. I also think both of these offenses have some nice depth. And it's not like they got 10 guys you trust, but you look at Colin Sadler and Elijah Thurman and say they could both plug and play at guard and tackle. So you got a couple guys in your reserves that give you that versatility. Very similar conversation with Samson Okunlola. I spelled his name wrong. I think I got Salmon on there. I'm going to add that to the notes. This is probably not going to be the last spelling mistake you see the kid make, but I'll fix that. I'm going to go with Miami because I think the upside is a little bit higher than Clemson, but I love Matt Luke. I love that they're returning pretty much everybody on this offensive line. Who do you got here?
I'm going Miami just because the play. I mean, the play on the field from guys like Francis Mauigoa and Inez Cooper, like it's just been better. I mean, as much as like I felt like we thought we were going to have a big year for Clemson's offensive line, it just wasn't great. It didn't feel like, and again, a lot of injuries it felt like throughout the year for sure. But that's a unit that I kind of think's underperforming the talent level in it right now. And this is a big year for Matt Luke to try to get them to a place where they're not holding this team back.
I think he got better. Definitely got better from 2023.
For sure got better, but it didn't. It certainly wasn't like an elite dominant unit. I thought Miami, for the most part, played elite dominant football.
Oh yeah, they were so good in pass pro. I mean, you look at Cam's numbers in terms of how much he was kept clean was elite, and that was a top 10 rushing offense in the country in terms of yards per carry. They just didn't run the football that much because they wanted Cam Ward slinging the pill. It's a really good offensive line for Miami. Defensive line, this might be the closest one that we have. I will give you the T-box first. Who you got on the defense?
I think I got to go Clemson. And you're right, it is tight, and a lot of it's going to be about how these young guys for Miami kind of step up. Like Justin Scott is a big one. Certainly Artavius Jones and guys like Blunt, like what do they do for this team? But right now, I personally think you got the two best players on Clemson in TJ Parker and Peter Woods.
Yes.
And now you can certainly argue Ruben Bain, You could argue all three of those guys, 1, 2, 3, however you want to put it.
Yep.
My opinion is probably TJ Parker and Peter Woods. I like that they go add Will Helton the depth, or to add, kind of fill that depth out in their defensive end room. But I look, when you have those two guys, and I don't think it's lacking depth necessarily. And if DeMonte Capehart, God forbid, he gets his waiver, they're going to have it hammered.
Yes, Capehart's a massive storyline for Clemson to follow, because if there's one concern and why I might lean Miami here is you do have some depth question marks for Clemson, right?
Yeah,
especially
you got to have Vic Burley or Heaven Brown Schuler or Mari Adams.
Amari Adams is the name that I'm looking at if I'm a Clemson fan. Like I don't bang the table for freshmen very often. Amari Adams is that guy, in my opinion. I'm going to go Miami, and it's going to go one because I like the depth a little bit more, and I think I'm going to go bet on the upside here. Like Justin Scott going into year 2, Akeem Mesidor coming back is really, really big, and he's going to play a little bit more on the edge now, which I think helps him. Armando Blum, what does he look like in year 2? Booker Pickett was probably my favorite Hurricane commit in the 2024 class. I think I got that wrong. Yeah, I'm good. 2024. And then Marquise Lightfoot I like a lot too. My
issue kind of is they both have similar questions where you need a couple of young guys who you haven't really seen, but you have a ton of confidence in. I do think the top end is a little bit better for Clemson. That's why I lean that. But you're probably right. There might be a little higher upside with some of the young guys from Miami.
I don't know. Can I just go with a push? Can I just go with a it's kind of cop out, but that's close. And I think that's kind of an interesting conversation for both teams, because both of these defensive lines could be forces in the 2024 or 2025 season. Both of these defensive lines probably underperformed in the 2024 year as well.
Frankly, I think there's an element of there's a reason defensive coordinators were fired at both schools, and Miami is firing a lot of coaches. I don't think the coordinators put these defenses in good enough positions, and that includes the defensive line. So I think you look what Tom Allen was able to do with that defensive line at Penn State, Minnesota. I mean, you look at that defensive line, very disruptive in their own right. So you have two coordinators now who I'm interested to see if they can get these units kind of rolling.
Who are you taking coordinators wise? We'll just add it to the roster battle.
It's got to be Tom Allen.
I think so too. Tom Allen was, and I like Corey Heatherman too, but that was
Corey Heatherman's a little less proven. I mean, Tom Allen, exactly you're going to get a really, really good coach.
And what I love about Tom Allen is he's going to come in and try to maximize this defensive line. What did Penn State want to do on the defense side of the football? We want to create negative plays. We want to sacks. We want to create turnovers. We're going to try to dominate this game in the front seven. Clemson has the ability to be that team. They just weren't under Wes Goodwin.
Turning them loose a little bit more, not having your inside guys too gapping and get them penetrating, get them behind the line of scrimmage, trying to make more plays. I think that's more Tom Allen style than probably what Wes Goodwin.
Let them dominate the football game. Linebacker room. I feel pretty good with Clemson here. Sammy Brown really came on late. Wade Woodaz has always been very, very consistent. Now, you have some depth question marks for Clemson. What does it look like behind it? Is Jeremiah Alexander going to play off a linebacker? Is he going to rush off the edge? I like Jamal Anderson. But for Miami, it's just you lose Kiko, who really didn't play all that good in 2024. I think Wesley Bissain's solid. And then you're kind of in wait-and-see mode for a Bobby Pruitt or an Darius Hayes. This one, you got two proven dogs for Clemson at linebacker. Give me the Tigers.
But I do like you're getting a little bit more athletic in the linebacker room. That's
Miami, yes.
Big thing. Miami. I look at guys like Pruitt. I thought he was really interesting. Popo Aguirre, I liked what he was doing too. I mean, good athletic linebackers. I don't think they had that enough. It didn't feel like with Kiko Mauino at times, just not being able to cover the ground you probably need to cover. I kind of like the composition of this young linebacker room, but you're right. At the end of the day, when you see a guy like Sammy Brown play the way he played as a true freshman, you have Wade Woodaz, and then Jamal Anderson's kind of the X factor for me. Long range.
I like him.
I want to see him on the field a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't have Popo on this depth chart. That was another mistake. So I got some spelling to clean up. You got some names to add. Let's go to the back end. Now, 4 weeks ago, this is a very obvious answer. Right now on paper, no, this is just on paper right now. Miami did some things in the secondary. I mean, this went from a huge weakness from a personnel standpoint, just not having power forward caliber guys. to like all of a sudden loaded. I mean, we're looking at 5 transfer portal additions, all of which I think can start for Miami in the back end. Look, I'm just going to go Clemson until I see it, though. I think that's where I sit. Clemson's young, but they're kind of like getting these guys developed in the like Avian Terrell. He's a second-year guy. Khalil Barnes. These guys were young. I'm going to go Clemson, but I do think this Miami Hurricane secondary could go from one of the worst in the country to like one of the best really quick. But I'm sitting here January 18th. I ain't going to take Miami yet until I see it on the football field.
I would probably agree with that because, again, like OJ Frederici, get him back. He was the only consistent performer from Miami, it felt like, in the 24 season. And then, God, I'm really interested to see what Zachariah Poyser can do. And guys, they just added so much more athleticism, ranginess, physicality. Yeah. They're just such a more talented unit. And again, I think you have a coach who's going to do a better job than what Lance Guidry did. I'm leaning Clemson for sure because I've seen them play really good football, like seeing Avian Terrell play good.
Okay, I got a question I got to get off my chest. Sorry to interrupt you. What does it look like with all the new faces in the secondary is probably a conversation too. Like we talk about continuity on the offensive line is really important. I think it's equally important in the secondary in terms of communication and where to pass off and stuff. And it very well might be like 4 new faces starters, which is what you wanted if you're Miami because you just weren't good enough there last year. I would lean Clemson. That's just another reason I lean Clemson is like the continuity. All of these guys have played a lot of football together. This is brand new for Miami. Now, I think it's much better, and you're going to see a better unit. Are there going to be some growing pains? That's probably the question I have. That's kind of another reason I probably rock with Clemson here. Dill, let's get into right now. And again, this is January 18th. We reserve the rights to change the decisions. Clemson, Miami. Who are you taking to win the ACC in 2025?
I think I'm going to take Miami. I just think the trajectory they're on, their ability to be physical on both sides of the line of scrimmage, especially on the offensive line.
Did we just waste the last hour off kick because you were on the Clemson bandwagon?
I am so fully on the bandwagon for Miami, like in a sense. Like again, there's certainly things they got to clean up. I like that they were able to. I mean, he made the move he had to make at the DC spot. Like, if he didn't fire Lance Guidry, I'd be like, oh, man, where's Mario Cristobal going with this program? But I look at the way he's developed physicality across this team, and if they just get decent play from that back end of the defense, I think they're going to be disruptive along the defensive line. I think this team, to me, it's about the fact that their offensive line, I think, is about as good as anyone in the country, and that is such a huge starting point for I feel like the offensive line play, this is a very long-winded answer, I get that, but offensive line play has really declined, I feel like, at times for certain teams in the portal era. It really hasn't for Miami. They've been dominant. I think that's a huge thing. I know Clemson's had continuity, but that's a unit that I haven't seen them play great football yet.
All right.
In a couple of years.
You're taking Miami. Well, yeah. That's took me for a little surprise, too. I'm going to go Miami, too. I thought you were on the Clemson train. Look, these two teams are in – it's very close, but I'm going to go Miami. For kind of similar reasons. I trust line of scrimmage play specifically on the offensive line. I trust Carson Beck a lot. I also trust Cade, but I'll go Miami. Clemson fans, y'all can let us both hear in the comments section.
Ball on the ground. It's a really good
that's a good point. Like the run game you trust for Miami. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll go to battle with y'all in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.